breaking news. Billionaire Jeffrey Epstein arrested on new sex trafficking charges. The accusations date back to the 2000s and involve alleged crimes in New York and Palm Beach, Florida. In 2008, the wealthy hedge fund manager pleaded guilty in Florida to...
Isn't it true that you kept a calendar or schedule? Okay, change.
Going off the video record at 1:05 p.m.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative. Are you kidding?
A new NPR investigation reveals the Justice Department withheld portions of the Jeffrey Epstein files that contain allegations involving President Trump, including material tied to claims that Mr. Trump sexually abused a minor.
This island in the U.S. Virgin Islands was meant to be a paradise. For decades, it served as the backdrop for crimes that shook the world. But the true story of Jeffrey Epstein isn't about an island. It's about how the most powerful systems on Earth, banks, courts, federal agencies, deliberately shielded a sexual predator for 40 years. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented conspiracy. And the evidence lies within the government's own records.
From pole to pole and sea to sea, the words New York bring to mind this dramatic skyline.
January 20th, 1953, Brooklyn, New York. Jeffrey Edward Epstein is born into a middle-class family, a father who was a public servant, an ordinary life. Nothing in his childhood suggested what was to come, but from an early age, Epstein demonstrated a singular skill, the ability to fabricate realities. 1969, he enters the prestigious Cooper Union. He drops out. 1971, he tries again at New York University's current Institute of Mathematical Sciences. He drops out again. 0 degrees, no formal credentials. And then, in 1974, something extraordinary happens. This man with no academic background is hired to teach physics and mathematics at the Dalton School, one of Manhattan's most elite institutions, where the children of the American aristocracy study. Who hired him? Donald Barr, father of William Barr, who decades later would become the Attorney General of the United States, twice. Epstein's first connection to power was not accidental. It was the beginning of a pattern. At Dalton, Epstein wasn't just teaching, he was identifying targets. The children of Wall Street bankers, heirs to massive fortunes. He cultivated these relationships the way a gardener tends to seeds. 2 years later, in 1976, he is fired. Officially, poor performance. Unofficially, reports of inappropriate conduct that were never investigated. 1976. Epstein joins Bear Stearns as a junior assistant, the investment bank where future titans learned the art of legal greed. But Epstein's rise was different. 4 years. That was all it took for him to become a limited partner, a position that typically required decades of experience. How? By lying about his academic credentials and operating within the Special Products Division, a euphemism for solve the problems of the ultra-rich, no questions asked. What Epstein learned at Bear Stearns was revolutionary for him. He realized that at the top of the financial pyramid, the perception of wealth begets real wealth, and that complexity, offshore trusts, Cayman Island structures, transfers through multiple jurisdictions, acts as an impenetrable shield against scrutiny. 1981, an abrupt exit. The official version cites minor regulatory violations. The truth? Epstein was already demonstrating extreme high-risk behavior and practices that, even by Wall Street's loose standards, were problematic. But he didn't leave as a failure. He left with something far more valuable, a contact list and the knowledge of how money really works when you have enough of it. The 1980s. Epstein founds his own firm, J. Epstein and Company. The premise was audacious, even for Wall Street. He would only accept clients with a net worth of over $1 billion, and he demanded something no reputable manager would ever ask for: total control over their assets. Fixed fees, no commissions, no detailed accountability. It was the perfect arrangement for someone who didn't want anyone asking questions. There was only one problem. where were the billionaires? Mid-1980s, Leslie Wexner, founder of L Brands, Victoria's Secret, The Limited, Abercrombie & Fitch. One of the wealthiest men in America, and apparently one of the most naive. What began as a professional relationship quickly transformed into something unprecedented in financial history. In 1991, Wexner granted Epstein a power of attorney so sweeping that legal experts described it as commercially insane. Epstein could sign checks, buy and sell property, move tens of millions without prior approval, and move it he did. The largest private residence in Manhattan, 7 floors, 21,000 square feet, transferred from a Wexner-linked entity to Epstein for a price investigators consider symbolic or non-existent. A private Boeing 727, the plane that would later become known as the Lolita Express. Originally, it was part of Wexner's corporate assets. Investigations by Forbes and other publications reached a devastating conclusion. There is no evidence that Epstein was a financial genius. No documented major market moves. No successful venture capital investments. Epstein's fortune wasn't built. It was extracted, systematically, from Leslie Wexner. 2007, Wexner breaks ties with Epstein, alleging that he misappropriated $46 million. Experts believe this figure is grotesquely conservative. But here's the crucial detail. Wexner never pursued criminal charges. He never reported him to the authorities. Why? Because by then, Epstein held something far more valuable than money. He had secrets. The Epstein empire had 2 arms. The financial one, which we have just described, was the facade. The second arm was the actual operation, and it functioned with the logistical efficiency of a multinational corporation. Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of Robert Maxwell, the British media tycoon who died under mysterious circumstances in 1991. When her father's empire collapsed, leaving her financially adrift, she found salvation in Epstein, and he found in her the missing piece. Maxwell was not just Epstein's socialite girlfriend, she was the CEO of the trafficking operation. The 2021 verdict legally confirmed it. She was the primary recruiter, facilitator, and an active participant in the abuses. Ghislaine created an atmosphere of trust and exclusivity. She spoke of mentorship, modeling, and educational opportunities, using her social standing to put young individuals and their families at ease. The operation followed a systematic process. Outreach, identifying young people in vulnerable situations or those seeking careers in the arts. Engagement. Initial contact was often made through referrals or at public social venues. The 2021 legal proceedings detailed how Maxwell facilitated this environment by normalizing the network's activities and lowering moral boundaries. Over time, the system pressured certain individuals to take on administrative roles within the organization, perpetuating the cycle through financial incentives or professional pressure. A clear hierarchy supported the operation. Sarah Kellen, an executive assistant responsible for the complex logistics and scheduling of appointments. Leslie Groff, a long-term secretary who managed the organization's high-level communications and daily agendas. Nadia Marcinkova, a pilot who transitioned from an early recruit to a key member of the administrative inner circle. These women were not observers, they were operators. They formed a circle of protection around Epstein, insulating him from direct risks and ensuring a constant supply of new victims. And then there were the properties. Each one meticulously chosen, each one with a specific purpose in the machine. New York, 9 East 71st Street, the command center. A bizarrely decorated mansion, prosthetic eyes on the walls, eccentric murals. But the true horror was hidden. Surveillance cameras in almost every room. Epstein wasn't just committing crimes, he was documenting the crimes of others. When we entered that house in 2019, we found a surveillance system that went far beyond security. Guest rooms, bathrooms, private areas, everything was monitored. The conclusion was clear: the collection of compromising material. Palm Beach, Florida. Strategically located near high schools, Palm Beach police documented a steady flow of minors, some appearing as young as 14, entering and leaving the property. And then, The crown jewel of impunity, Little St. James. 72 acres of private territory in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Far from mainland jurisdictions, far from prying eyes. Local workers nicknamed it Pedophile Island, years before the world discovered why. Zorro Ranch, New Mexico. 10,000 acres of absolute isolation. Reports indicate that Epstein had delusional plans, eugenics experiments, mass insemination to improve the human race. The main mansion had extensive underground facilities whose purpose has never been fully clarified. Paris, Avenue Foch, the bridge to Europe. Epstein worked with Jean-Luc Brunel, a modeling agent, recruiting young French and Eastern European women under false promises of fashion careers. 5 properties, 3 continents, an industrial-scale sex trafficking network. And for decades, no one stopped him. 2005, a concerned mother in Palm Beach files a police report. Her 14-year-old daughter was taken to a billionaire's mansion to give a massage. Police Chief Michael Reiter assigns his best team to the case. For months, detectives comb through Epstein's trash. They monitor comings and goings. They interview dozens of victims. The pattern is unmistakable. Epstein is operating an underage exploitation ring on an industrial scale. We had evidence for a life sentence under Florida state laws, testimonies from multiple victims, physical evidence, phone records. It was an open and shut case, the best case of my career. And then the FBI took over, and everything changed. The federal intervention. Alexander Acosta, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. When the case reached his desk in 2007, he had the opportunity to dismantle one of the largest sex trafficking rings in American history. Epstein's defense was formidable. Alan Dershowitz, a famous Harvard law professor. Ken Starr, the former independent counsel who pursued Bill Clinton. They didn't just defend Epstein, they attacked. They investigated the prosecutors. They threatened to expose embarrassing details. They used political connections as a battering ram. And Acosta capitulated. The Non-Prosecution Agreement, June 2008. The Non-Prosecution Agreement, a document that legal scholars describe as unprecedented in American legal history. I will read the terms. Total federal immunity. The United States government agreed not to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein for any federal crime, past or future, related to the investigation. Extended immunity. Immunity was extended to any potential co-conspirators. Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Nadia Marcinkova, all shielded, with no requirement to cooperate with law enforcement. Minor charges. Epstein pleads guilty to only 2 minor state charges: solicitation of prostitution. Sentence, 18 months, serving only 13. Special privileges, private prison wing, daily work release, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. He basically just slept in prison. Absolute secrecy. The agreement was kept secret from the victims, a direct violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. Federal prosecutors lied to the victims' lawyers. They said the investigation was still active while the agreement had already been signed. This was not just a failure of justice, it was an active obstruction of justice orchestrated by government officials. The intelligence connection. Years later, when the press finally exposed the agreement, Acosta gave an extraordinary explanation. I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence, that I should leave it alone, that it was above my pay grade. Belonged to intelligence. The implication was explosive. Epstein was allegedly an intelligence asset, possibly American, possibly foreign, using his network to gather compromising material on powerful figures. No documentary evidence of this intelligence intervention was ever presented. No memo, no directive. If there really was involvement from intelligence agencies, they completely covered their tracks. Or Acosta is lying about the reason he caved. What we know for sure, Epstein had a fake Austrian passport in his safe, issued in the 80s, with his photo but a different name, and his residence listed as Saudi Arabia. What for? The answer died with him. 2009, Epstein is released from prison. Now a level 3 registered sex offender, the highest classification. In any functional society, he would be a pariah. Instead, Prince Andrew, Duke of York, photographed walking with him in Central Park. 2 years after the conviction, Andrew stayed at Epstein's mansion, ignoring desperate warnings from his aides. Bill Gates met with Epstein several times starting in 2011 to discuss philanthropy. Later emails revealed that Epstein tried to use information about Gates's personal life as leverage, possibly an extramarital affair. Jess Staley, a senior executive at JP Morgan and later CEO of Barclays, visited Epstein in prison in 2009, exchanged over 1,200 emails with him. Some contained coded references to Epstein's Snow Whites, a sickening euphemism for his young victims. Epstein donated millions to Harvard, the MIT Media Lab, and the New York Academy of Sciences. He organized scientific conferences on Little St. James, discussions on theoretical physics and evolutionary biology, serving as a cover for the presence of young women. Stephen Hawking attended a conference on the island. There is no evidence that he knew about the crimes, but it illustrates how Epstein used the legitimacy of science to normalize his presence. Throughout this entire decade, banks continued processing his transactions. JP Morgan ignored over 200 internal alerts of suspicious activity. Why? Epstein moved tens of millions. It was lucrative, and the trafficking never stopped. Subsequent civil lawsuits confirmed. Epstein continued moving women across international borders, using his jet and fake passports throughout the 2000s. November 2018. A Miami Herald reporter named Julie K. Brown publishes Perversion of Justice, down dozens of victims who had never spoken publicly. She exposed the details of the 2008 plea deal. She revealed that Alexander Acosta, the prosecutor who gave Epstein immunity, was now Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor. The outrage was instant and global. Acosta resigned. The Department of Justice was forced to reopen the case. July 6, 2019. Jeffrey Epstein lands in Teterboro, New Jersey, returning from Paris. Federal agents await him on the tarmac. This time, no deals. He is indicted for sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy. Search of the Manhattan mansion. Thousands of photos of nude minors. Piles of cash. Diamonds. The fake Austrian passport. Bail is denied. Extreme flight risk. Metropolitan Correctional Center, Manhattan. One of the most secure federal prisons in the United States. July 23rd. Epstein is found injured in his cell, placed on suicide watch. Days later, inexplicably, removed from the watch. August 9th. His cellmate is transferred, violating protocols. Night of August 9th to 10th. Guards fail to make their mandatory rounds every 30 minutes. Hallway cameras fail. August 10th, 6:30 a.m. Jeffrey Epstein is found hanged. The medical examiner declares it a suicide. 2023. The Department of Justice Inspector General concludes gross negligence, misconduct, systemic failures, but no evidence of homicide. The question remains, was it suicide or was he allowed to die? April 2025. Virginia Giuffre, the most vocal survivor who sued Prince Andrew, who fought for justice for decades, commits suicide in Australia. Exhausted, traumatized, abandoned. Her posthumous memoir, Nobody's Girl, contains brutal accounts of abuse at the hands of the global elite. Her death generated a wave of outrage that finally moved Congress. November 2025. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is passed. Millions of pages are released. Cascading resignations. Prince Andrew loses his last titles. But the majority of the enablers never face criminal consequences. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving 20 years in prison. JP Morgan paid $365 million in settlements. Deutsche Bank paid $75 million. More than 150 victims received compensation from Epstein's estate. But the lawyers who facilitated the 2008 plea deal never faced sanctions from the Bar Association. The bankers who processed knowingly suspicious transactions, no criminal charges. The politicians and princes who benefited from his network, protected by settlements and jurisdictions. They want us to believe that Epstein was a lone monster. But he wasn't. He was a symptom. And the system that created him, that protected him, that profited from him, that system still exists. Nadia Marcinkova, one of the main enablers, disappeared in 2024. No one knows where she is, if she is alive, if she fled, or if she was silenced. The investigation continues, but justice has already failed.